It's 2025. Global tensions are peaking. US-China rivalry has reached a breaking point. NATO's unity is cracking. Russia's economy is collapsing under sanctions. Iran and North Korea are testing limits. What if it finally snaps and World War III begins? This is a data-driven simulation based on actual troop counts, missile ranges, alliances, and geography. No fiction, no propaganda, just reality. Section 1, Introduction, The World on a Wire. The year is 2025. The world holds its breath, a collective tension felt from the high rises of New York to the crowded streets of Mumbai. News tickers flash with a relentless rhythm. Russian troops amass near NATO borders. Chinese warships patrol with unprecedented aggression. American carriers steam toward contested waters. On social media, rumors and state-sponsored propaganda poison the well, making it nearly impossible to distinguish truth from fiction. Diplomats issue stern warnings, their words echoing in the hollow chambers of the United Nations, but their calls for de-escalation are drowned out by the drums of war. This is not a work of fiction. What follows is a data-driven simulation of the first 100 days of a Third World War, based on current geopolitical realities, military capabilities, and established alliances. This simulation is constructed using publicly available data, troop deployments from the International Institute for Strategic Studies, missile ranges confirmed by the Center for Strategic and International Studies, allied commitments like NATO's Article 5, and economic projections from the IMF and the World Bank. Our goal is not to sensationalize or predict with certainty, but to provide a sober, cause-and-effect chronicle. The simulation begins tomorrow, October 21st, 2025. What you are about to read is a projection of a war that nobody can win. Section 2. The Trigger. A collision in the South China Sea. The incident happens at 0430 local time. Satellite view. Two vessels dangerously close. US and Chinese flags in frame. Close map. South China Sea, Spratly Islands. The USS John Finn, an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer, is conducting a freedom of navigation operation near the contested Spratly Islands. A routine patrol intended to assert international maritime law. A Chinese Type 052D destroyer, Xiamen, shadows the American ship more aggressively than usual. Communications between the bridges are tense, filled with standardized warnings. In the darkness, a miscalculation occurs. The two massive steel hulls collide. A grinding screech of metal, a catastrophic failure of seamanship that sends shockwaves across the globe. The immediate aftermath is a carefully controlled escalation. Beijing does not launch an all-out assault. It frames the collision as a deliberate act of American aggression. Within 6 hours, the PLA announces a full naval and aerial blockade of Taiwan, a quarantine to prevent further provocations. Planned warships form a tight cordon. Submarines slip into position, severing the island's lifelines. The United States responds with a stark immediate declaration, DEFCON 2, the level just below all-out nuclear war, the highest since 1962. Strategic bombers are loaded and dispersed. Nuclear submarine commanders receive preliminary targeting orders. The message to Beijing and Moscow is unequivocal. A chill runs down the spine of the world. One step from nuclear exchange. The first shots are fired by keyboards. Massive, coordinated cyberattacks hit U.S. allies in the Pacific. Japan experiences widespread power outages. South Korea, too. Grids targeted by sophisticated malware attributed to elite Chinese units. Parts of the western United States suffer rolling blackouts and communications failures. California, Washington State. Ports, railways, and air traffic control are disrupted, slowing U.S. mobilization across the Pacific. In Europe, the second front opens. Russia re-enters eastern Ukraine with overwhelming force, pushing past depleted lines. Long-range cruise missiles strike known NATO logistics hubs in Poland and Romania, aiming to decapitate reinforcement capability. NATO invokes Article 5, Collective defense is active. An attack on one is an attack on all. In South Asia, India and Pakistan put forces on highest alert, fearing spillover. No direct great power battles yet, but the global security architecture is dismantled. The world fractures into armed camps. The internet is weaponized. The machinery of total war grinds into motion. Markets crash 20% in 24 hours as investors flee to gold and government bonds. The war escalates to direct kinetic conflict. China launches DF-21D and DF-26 ballistic missiles, carrier killers. Targets: Guam and Okinawa. Andersen Air Force Base is heavily damaged. Naval facilities hit. Anti-access, area denial demonstrated. Strikes from 1,000 miles away. Thousands of American casualties. The U.S. response is swift. B-2 Spirits strike Chinese naval assets and coastal air defenses. Carrier strike groups advance into the Philippine Sea to break the Taiwan blockade. The Pacific becomes a deadly chessboard. Submarines hunt surface ships. Long-range sensors scan the skies. The naval war begins in earnest. In Europe, Russian armored divisions push into Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia, supported by overwhelming air power. NATO countermoves launch from Poland. U.S. 82nd Airborne and Polish forces engage vanguards. The Suwałki Gap becomes a bloody focal corridor. Iran's IRGC strikes U.S. bases in Bahrain and Qatar. Israel retaliates against nuclear and IRGC command sites. A third front erupts. The global internet fragments. Digital walls rise. Undersea cables are severed. Entire populations slip into splinternet isolation. China's blockade gamble dares the U.S. to fight in two oceans. Russia signals a second European front if NATO intervenes. The crash is not just numbers, it is evaporated savings, frozen investment, and the first tremor of global collapse. Day 30 closes with fleets maneuvering and fronts widening. No way back to the status quo. The world order realigns, silently, terrifyingly. Section 5, Day 31 through 60, The Brink of Annihilation. The world teeters on the edge of nuclear catastrophe. Russian leadership engages in terrifying nuclear brinkmanship. American leadership responds in kind. Russian state TV showcases strategic missile forces, a thinly veiled threat to use tactical nuclear weapons. The United States deploys nuclear-capable B-21 bombers to forward bases in the United Kingdom. No tactical nukes are used, but a single miscalculation could trigger apocalypse. Russia's advance creates a refugee crisis. 15 million civilians flee westward. Germany, France, and neighbors overwhelmed. The Black Sea, critical for grain, is a war zone. Ukrainian and Russian ports shut. Global wheat exports collapse. Prices skyrocket. Food riots erupt across North Africa and the Middle East. In the Pacific, the battle for Taiwan reaches its bloody conclusion. After roughly 45 days, Chinese forces establish a beachhead. At devastating cost to the PLA Navy from U.S. subs and airstrikes. The U.S. and allies, including a fully mobilized Japan, impose a distant naval blockade. Sea lanes are under Allied control. China is cut off from oil, food, and raw materials. The war settles into grinding stalemate across multiple fronts. China annexes Taiwan but is economically strangled. Russia is bogged down in attrition against a unified NATO. Allied sea control holds, but sustaining a multi-front war strains resources. Every victory is offset by a strategic loss elsewhere. Shock fades into the grim reality of a prolonged global struggle. Section 6, Day 61 through 100, A World Exhausted. War fatigue takes hold. Patriotic fervor dies under images of destruction and constant casualty reports. Despite naval dominance, the U.S. economy hemorrhages. Debt balloons. The loss of China trade triggers deep recession. Anti-war protests swell. Political consensus fractures. Powerful, but bleeding from 1,000 cuts. In China, the blockade bites. Fuel, food, and medicine shortages trigger unrest. Rationing and martial law grip coastal cities. The mandate of heaven slips. In Russia, catastrophic losses drive a leadership crisis. A junta of hardline generals seizes control. The president is removed. The UN, with neutral powers like India and Brazil, attempts a ceasefire. Initially dismissed, talks gain traction. After 98 days of near-total silence, a fragile, limited-access channel reopens between the U.S. and Russia's new military leadership. 100 days redraw the map in blood and fire. Civilian dead from combat, starvation, and disease, an estimated 40 million. Global GDP down nearly 60%. Supply chains shattered. Entire cities lie in ruins. The fabric of international society is torn apart. The war is far from over, but every nation, victor and vanquished, is profoundly broken. The fight is no longer for victory, but for survival. A world exhausted looks for a way to stop the bleeding. History will remember the cost. The numbers that define the first 100 days are difficult to comprehend. A scale of suffering not seen in generations. Approximately 40 million have perished, most from the war's secondary effects. In besieged cities, millions die from starvation and the collapse of medical services. In refugee camps, cholera and dysentery spread uncontrollably. This war is fought in hospitals, in bread lines, and in desperate camps. In Europe, the Russian advance creates roughly 15 million refugees, a torrent fleeing west. In Asia, the battle for Taiwan and strikes on Japan and the Philippines displace another 10 million. Humanitarian organizations are overwhelmed, forced into impossible triage. Black Sea grain cut off. Blockade of China halts manufactured goods. Oil price spikes cripple transport and farming. No fuel means no crops, no ships, no food. Food riots multiply. The poorest starve first, but hunger stalks develop nations too. After 100 days of simulated global war, one truth is undeniable. In a modern world war, there are no winners. Victory is a relic of a bygone era. China may take Taiwan, but as a shattered, blockaded prize. Russia may push into Eastern Europe, but at the cost of its economy, military, and stability. The US and NATO may hold the seas, at the price of lives and economic health. Our world is too interconnected and our weapons too destructive to sustain global war. Just-in-time supply chains, finance, the internet, profound vulnerabilities. This is not World War II. It is a war of system collapse, cyberattacks, economic warfare, broken logistics. Even tactical wins leave nations struggling to feed people, rebuild cities, and heal trauma. Long-term consequences, from fallout to ecological damage to mass trauma, would shape humanity for centuries. Therefore, the only rational course is prevention. This is not a prophecy. It is a warning, a data-driven plea for diplomacy, de-escalation, and understanding. The task is to make such a conflict unthinkable and invest in peace as if survival depends on it. Because it does. Subscribe for the AHA Project, where we decode the world's biggest what-ifs through real-world data.